78 Fight News here with the brother Brian, and today we're going to discuss the greatest MMA fighters of all time from our perspective and our opinion. What's up, Brian?
Yo, what's up, 78? What's up, YouTube?
Man, not much. We're gonna so I'm gonna let you start off, man. Who would you say your top 10 MMA fighters of all time are?
My top 10 MMA fighters of all time. Number 10, I'm gonna have to go with Frank Shamrock. Frank Shamrock changed the game, when he first came onto the scene, when he, first started, in the old original UFC. He is pretty much a prototypical MMA fighter today. The guy he was the first one that brought the cross-training aspect to the sport. And he was the one that really brought in just the aspect of being a mixed martial artist, the true aspect of mixed martial artists into the game. And this dude has fought in a plethora of opponents, man, throughout his whole career. And he's been a UFC champion. This guy is one of the originators. He's a great pioneer. I put him in my top 10. He's right there at number 10. Number 9, I have BJ Penn. Reason why I have BJ Penn is, in my opinion, he's the greatest lightweight in the history of mixed martial arts up to this point. This man has defeated, the likes of, Matt Hughes. I mean, this dude has held the UFC lightweight title, against some of the greatest fighters of all time. At the lightweight division, he defeated Takanori Gomi, who at the time, when Takanori Gomi was ranked number 1, when no one knew people knew who BJ Penn was, but he defeated Takanori Gomi, who was considered to be the second best of his time period. Second best lightweight of all time, and he defeated him and beat him when he was at top. BJ Penn, well-rounded fighter. Has one of the greatest hearts you'll ever see in the game. One of the greatest chins. Excellent boxing, excellent jiu-jitsu. I mean, he is one of the great legends of the sport.
He a beast with that rubber guard too.
Who?
I said he a beast with the rubber guard.
Yeah, his guard is. Oof. You don't want to be on the ground with that guy, whether you're on the bottom or top. And number 8, I'd have to go with a guy in Royce Gracie. The guy that actually brought the game to the States.
Right.
This guy, man, this dude defeated, a lot of guys. He was defeating guys that were bigger than him. He is one of the greatest Brazilian jiu-jitsu artists of all time, no question. What he brought to the game and his dominance in the in the early UFCs. I mean, he really set the standard, of what a dominant mixed martial artist should be.
Right.
And what he brought. I mean, not only what he brought to the game, but just the legacy he's left. I mean, you can't. There ain't no way you can't respect that. I mean, he truly is a great pioneer.
Absolutely.
Yep. And so I have him at number 8.
Okay.
Number 7, I have to go with Mark Coleman. I go with Mark Coleman because he's the original UFC heavyweight champion. He is what we call, a pioneer, but also one of the great tough heavyweights of all time. This dude has fought in many wars against Cro Cop, Fedor. I mean, he's fought in Shogun. He's fought in, the guy, all the great, all the tough fights, like Mo Smith,
right.
Of the old UFC era. I mean, this dude has defeated so many, not only defeated me, he's taken a lot of losses. I mean, but I think his record right now is 16-10 as it stands, but, your record is, especially when you go into the sport of mixed martial arts, the records do not mean as much. Like in boxing, you could tell this guy has this many wins. Oh, he's not. Especially in this era. Oh, he's not that good. But when you come into MMA, you fight the margin of error is so short, so small, and the fact that you have to compete against so many
There's so many ways to lose in MMA.
So many ways. You know, I mean, you know just as well as I do that, you know, styles make fights. You fight a certain dude, and if he's able to stifle your offense, he can mount his offense on you, and you have no idea how to, contend with it. So, I mean, the losses on his record does not mean much to me, because if you look at all the tough losses he's had, they were against some of the greatest fighters in the history of this game.
Yeah, in my opinion, Mark Coleman is the original ground and pound expert.
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Especially back then, he was throwing headbutts, elbows, punches. I mean, he truly is the godfather of ground and pound, you know?
Yeah.
And, I mean, I know he's one of those guys that, kind of like Kevin Randleman, Mark Coleman was never a guy that wanted to train in other disciplines, you know. He was more of, I'm going to be a power wrestler, and that's how I'm going to fight. You know,
Right.
He never really became a true mixed martial artist, but, you know, that when you try to compare, like, generations, I think this is like the third or fourth generation of mixed martial arts, where the first generation was the old UFC, the second generation was kind of the Fedor, you know, the BJ Penns, that generation, and then this generation is more of the John Joneses, the guys that are more of the mixed martial artists, the more of the guys that are well-rounded in every aspect.
Absolutely.
You're just not, you know what I'm saying?
Oh, yeah.
So it's hard, it's hard to really compare him to these era of fighters now, but he is a stepping stone for ground and pound, and he's a stepping stone to the heavyweight division. So that's why I have him at number 7. Number 6, I have to go with the natural Randy Couture.
Okay.
This guy, I mean, I'd say he's at least the third or fourth best heavyweight of all time, or at least third or fourth. Yeah, third or fourth. I mean, this guy. I mean, forget about the James Toney win. I mean, whatever that's.
Right.
Oldest champion in UFC history, MMA history, in my opinion. You know, of any major title. I mean, this dude has had career-defining wins over guys, you know, such as Mark Coleman. Even though Mark Coleman was past his prime at that point, he has career-defining wins against Vitor Belfort, you know, Jeremy Horn, Pedro Hizzo, you know, Chuck Liddell, and Tito Ortiz. You know, this man has fought, you know, of who's who, you know, in the heavyweight division from that generation all the way to this generation, you know, and now he's retired. I mean, I look at this man's career, you know, he legitimately is the third best heavyweight, you know, of all time, you know, legacy-wise.
Yeah.
You know,
and at the time he beat Tito Ortiz, people forget that he wasn't expected to beat Tito Ortiz.
No, he wasn't. He wasn't. I mean, this dude was, at that point, you know, was like, I think, like 30s, like in his late 30s, you know, Tito Ortiz was in the prime of his career, you know, and then you know, he took a hiatus for at least, you know, for a little while, and then he comes back, you know, and beats Tim Sylvia, you know, for the heavyweight championship, you know, and that was something that, you know, nobody at all expected, you know, him to do, you know. He went up and competed against Brock Lesnar when he's way old, you know,
Right.
and, you know, obviously he got crushed, but, you know, he still was able to he was competitive in that fight.
Right.
You know, we all know about the James Toney, you know, thing, but, you know, I really don't care about that fight too much, but just look at the man's career overall, man. You got to respect it.
Absolutely.
You know, I think what he's accomplished, you know, and what he's brought to the game, you know, it was a career-defining wins. He's definitely at number 6 on my top 10 list. Now, the hard part is number 5. You know, who should I put in at my number 5? Number 5, man, I might have to go with. I was thinking about GSP at my number 5,
Right.
but GSP should not be. I don't think. You know, I think he's more of the top 15-ish. You know, but I'd actually go with someone like, you know, originator. Guys such as what's it called? Shogun Rua.
Yeah, that's a good pick.
Shogun Rua was the originator too, to some degree. He's widely considered the greatest light heavyweight of all time. This dude has beaten Alistair Overeem. The dude beat Rampage. The dude had the light heavyweight title at one point in time. This dude has had some great fights in the game, man. Shogun, man, with his wide range, striking, his grappling skills, which is solid. He was always, a guy that can go out there and just not only put on great performances, but put on great entertaining action fights. And he definitely, in my opinion, is the best light heavyweight of all time. Now, in the future, I think, John Jones is going to have a say in that, but I mean, I look at, him in Pride when he won the middleweight, Grand Prix back in the day, defeating such guys as, such as Ricardo Arona, and then when he, Hajiro Nogueira,
right.
I mean, the dude had some really good, wins in Pride, and then when he came over to the UFC, he did his thing. He had the little 2 fights against Lyoto Machida. The first fight, I thought he won. The second fight, he obviously knocked the guy out. That was a career-defining fight. I'd have to put him at number 4, all time, or number 5.
Number 5,
right? Number 5, yep. Number 4, I got Sakuraba. Sakuraba, in my opinion, is probably the greatest Japanese fighter of all time. This man fought so many different fighters at so many different weight classes. He was a guy, he had one of the, in my opinion, one of the best wrestling for mixed martial arts. He had one of the best, single leg takedown, moves, in the history of the game. He was definitely, to me, like one of the pioneers for the game, especially when, you had the Japanese influence to it. This dude had had so much influence on the game. This dude's legacy, is really, marked in, what his accomplishments in Pride, in the UFC, what he did, outside the UFC as well, obviously with Pride. I mean, he fought, guys like, Ken Shamrock, he fought, Kevin Randleman, Vanderlei Silva, Crow Cop. He fought, he was, what he was? He was a product of guys, people that, were in his corner that owned him, basically. People that, like over in Japan, the fans, from what I've, consensusly, found out about them is that the fans are very nice and everything over there in Japan, but the business side of things are even more ruthless over there than it is over here. And they made this dude fight middleweight, light heavyweight. This dude was like $170.
Right.
He legitimately was like a welterweight, but this dude was fighting in all different weight classes, man. Just so them guys can just make money off of him. And really, it was out of spite and malice, towards the dude, because I guess he had some issues with some of the people over there that were promoting him and everything. But man, you look at down the list of the guys that he's fought, I mean, it's a who's who in mixed martial arts.
He was the Gracie Hunter.
Huh? Yeah. Oh, yeah. Back in the day, I mean, he brought his wrestling, like you said, he was a Gracie Hunter. His wrestling, he used his wrestling to defeat the Gracies, who were practically unbeatable back then. He like you said, was a Gracie Hunter. He beat all the Gracies of that time period.
Yeah,
Every
and
single one.
he played with him at that, and that's what shocked me about Sakuraba. Kazushi Sakuraba to me is one of the greatest MMA fighters. I don't know where I would rank him, but he definitely in my top 10 because of what he's accomplished and what he meant. His defeat to the Gracies at the time when he beat the Gracies was just unheard of, because at that time the Gracies were unbeatable. Everybody thought that, and he just had his way with him. I mean, I remember one fight with I can't remember if it was Hoist or Henzo. One of them he was fighting and he was just playing with him, man. He just had his way with him, and that's when I really knew he was the truth.
Oh yeah, I mean he was. I mean, it pains me, as an MMA fan, to hear guys like Dana White say that Yushin Okami is the greatest Japanese fighter of all time in mixed martial arts.
That's disgusting.
You have any comments on that?
That's just Dana White trying. Dana White is so biased when it comes to history, man, because he does because Sakuraba, is known for what he did in Pride and other events. He does not want to give Sakuraba. He really don't want. Dana White don't want to give props to anything that happened before him in MMA.
Pretty much. Pretty much. I mean, if you don't, buy into what this man's saying 100%, you bye-bye. And the influence that man has, man, over these people. He can say whatever he want to say, and people can just take what he want. It's saying, this guy is, this guy's not great. That guy is. He'll probably have. They have freaking Stephen Bonner in the Hall of Fame, but they won't have freaking Frank Shinlock or Ken Shinlock in the Hall of Fame. Such a damn shame, man.
It's ridiculous.
But yeah.
Who you got?
Yeah, that's my number 4. Now at number 3, I have to go with Dan Henderson.
Okay.
Dan Henderson, man, he has so many wins, man. So many wins against so many great fighters. I mean, this dude, still doing it at the age of 40. Defeating the likes of such a guy such as Fedor. That one time, when he fought Fedor, at a catchweight bout, which was a clean catchweight bout because they're both not that far off from each other.
Right.
He beat the Shogun brothers. He beat Vitor Belfort. He beat Vanderlei Silva. I mean, he didn't suffer a loss against Silva.
Right.
Submission loss, but Dan Henderson has displayed one of the greatest chins we've ever seen in mixed martial arts. Dude has that right hand is probably the most dangerous right hand in the history of the game. Even in today's game, man, he's still able to do it. He's been fighting, since the 90s. He's dominated, a lot of weight classes. Middleweight, he's dominating the light heavyweight division. He was a good welterweight in Pride. You look at this man's career, fighting the amount of dudes he's fighting, he's fighting, guys such as, obviously knocking out Bisping, one of the greatest knockouts we ever seen, but, having a fight with Quentin Rampage Jackson, which was a great fight.
Right.
He fought Nogueira. Pound for pound,
he fought everybody.
He fought everybody. Pretty much everybody that you expect him to fight. Now he's going to end up fighting John Jones. You know what I'm saying?
That's going to be a crazy ass fight, man.
Yeah. That's the best. That's one of the best fights. If he could find a way to pull that off, man, we got to, in my opinion, we got to talk about him being number 1, number 2, somewhere along that line, because that would be
I think if he could beat John Jones, I would definitely consider him at number 2. You know what I mean? But I agree with the number 3 spot. I got him solid at number 3 too. Who you got at number 2?
Yeah. Number 2. Yeah.
I already know who you got at number 2.
Yeah, you know what? I have to say it, man, because I know this guy is, widely considered to be number 1. I mean, it's debatable between number 1 and number 2. It's by your criteria. It's no argument against for either one, but I have to go with Anderson Silva, number 2. Anderson Silva, the greatest middleweight fighter in the history of mixed martial arts. I mean, this dude's beaten Dan Henderson, has Chael Sonnen twice on his resume. This dude has defeated, at 205, a bigger weight class than he's normally fighting in. Forrest Griffin, toyed with that man. He knocked him out with a jab,
Right.
Destroys that dude. I mean, this dude, even like, some of the fights before, the UFC, this guy's beaten guys like Jeremy Horn, who was a good fighter at the time,
Right.
Jorge Rivera, who was a decent fighter. But I mean, you look at him defeating Yushin Okami, who was one of the best contenders in the division today. He knocked out Vitor Belfort. Even though Vitor Belfort was coming off a 2-year layoff, that's still big on your resume.
Right.
I mean, the dude's undefeated in the UFC and is defending his belt a record like 12, 13 times. I can't remember the exact number, but
Yeah,
this man has the most.
I can't remember the exact number either, but that's why I would rank him. I would rank Anderson at number 1, but I definitely understand the argument for your number 1.
Yes, and I mean, and then look at Anderson Silva's striking. The best head movement we ever seen in mixed martial arts, man, bar none. His defense is like, he's literally on the feet unhittable. I mean, he has great striking from all different angles, a whole plethora of strikes, angles, he can utilize. He has good footwork. He's good on the ground. The only area he lacks in is his wrestling, but even then, he's able to defeat guys that are good wrestlers. He just like someone like Dan Henderson, good wrestler. Nate Marquardt, good wrestler. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
Chael Sonnen.
this guy, Chael Sonnen, defeated Chael Sonnen. This dude, even if you have a weakness, the best of the best still go out there and take the wins. No matter how tough it is, take the wins, even against the greatest of circumstances. And he's done that time and time again. He's definitely in the number 1, number 2 spot, of the greatest mixed martial artists of all time.
Absolutely.
Now,
number 1.
Yeah. Number 1, I got to go with, that last emperor, Fedor Emelianenko.
I hear you.
This man, personally one of my all-time inspirations, my all-time, like, top 5 favorite fighters, period, in any combat sport. This man, no question, the greatest heavyweight of all time. This dude has defeated guys like Arlovsky, Tim Sylvia, Nogueira twice. He defeated Mirko Cro Cop, which in my opinion is one of the top 2 greatest mixed martial arts fights of all time. His fight with Mirko Cro Cop in Pride. This man, ruled the heavyweight division for 10 years. He defeated, he fought even guys like Matt Lindland, who was a good fighter. He fought guys that, that actually do good on his resume if you look at it historically.
Right.
He defeated, he even defeated, someone like, what's his name? The big dude, Mark Hunt, who back then was 5-2 coming off a win against Cro Cop, who was a top heavyweight at the time, but that guy was, I don't know many guys that would stand up with that dude. If Fedor stood up with that guy, one of the greatest kickboxers ever, hardest chin, you'll ever see, one of the hardest knockout punchers you'll ever see, stood up with him and defeated him at his own game. This guy made a living off of fighting a guy in his own game in his own area during the time period where guys were just fighting in their style. This dude would actually wrestle with wrestlers and out wrestle guys. Strike with strikers that, strike with kickboxers that would otherwise knock you the fuck out. This dude fought Nogueira in two of the greatest fights you'll ever see. Literally took like 4 years off of that dude's life inside this man's guard. No one else would ever be inside Nogueira's guard, dropping crazy ass, ground and pound strikes against Nogueira. I mean, this dude beat, a prime he's hearing. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah, oh yeah.
This guy, people will say, he even has a win over Renato Sobral, from back in the day. This dude has a win against one of the greatest kickboxers of all time, Semi Shield, who is a good MMA fighter, but also, had the great career as a kickboxer. This dude, he has so many great wins, man. So many, memorable fights and memorable moments, and dominated the Pride heavyweight, division, and defeated, I think there was something where he's like 7-0 against former or current UFC heavyweight champions or something like that. At some point, he has like everybody that was a UFC champion that fought him has lost to him. Every single one of them.
Fedor was a big...
To me, the marquee fight that he's had in his career was against Mirko Cro Cop, the most dangerous striker in the history of mixed martial arts. So he stood toe-to-toe with this man. He even, at one point, took, in my opinion, probably the greatest MMA fight of all time. Just in terms of every aspect that it was fought in.
Right.
The hard determination of both fighters. Mirko Cro Cop, right leg hospital, left leg cemetery. This man caught Fedor with one of his left kicks, not flush, but still, most of the other guys that would have caught him with that kick, they would have been rocked and knocked out. This dude, kept coming and just, pure will and determination out-fought the dude. There were so many, career-defining wins. He's Herring, a prime Heath Herring who was really good. Semi Shield, who was one of the greatest kickboxers, probably the greatest heavyweight kickboxer of all time, defeated that dude who was actually good in mixed martial arts, had a good record in mixed martial arts. Even had wins over Matt Glenlin, Renato Sobral, Ricardo Arona, guys that were good fighters, Even Brett Rogers, who at the time was undefeated,
Right.
The thing is about, when guys are on their hot streak, people could say, oh, Brett Rogers wasn't shit now, but when he was on that streak, he was undefeated. All his fights were finishes, 10-0, and coming off a win against Arlovsky, who was in the top 10 at that point in time. And he was on an all-time, rise. This dude ended his career basically in that fight because he ain't never been the same since then. When I hear a lot of people, talk shit about this man's legacy and pretty much regurgitating what Dana White says, Fedor hadn't fought nobody since 2005, or people like him talking shit about his legacy, man. These guys just, what are you going to name? Everybody got a tomato can on their resume, man.
Right.
Yeah, he has some, Hong Man Choi, he has some of them type of dudes on his resume, but if you look deep and if you have a good perspective and understanding of things, you could tell that this man's career has been nothing less than legendary.
Yeah.
Dude is
I would agree.
Legend, man.
I would agree with your list, man. I would agree with it. Pretty much, you get everybody on there. I don't know exactly where I would place people except for the 1 and 2. I think I would reverse 1 and 2. I would put Anderson Silva at number 1 and Fedor at number 2, and I would agree with Dan Henderson at number 3. Definitely Kazushi Sakuraba would be in my top 10. I would probably put Matt Hughes in there somewhere. Matt Hughes, his wrestling ability was just, in my opinion, second to none. He was a beast at wrestling. Who else?
Well,
I think you gotta give honorary mentions to one of my favorite fighters, Marco Hua. You remember Marco Huas?
yeah.
Yeah,
I remember him.
he was one, king of the streets. He was one of my favorite fighters because he was one of the first people I seen incorporate Muay Thai and Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. He had a good stand-up because most of those Brazilian guys at the time were just good Jiu-Jitsu artists. But Marco Huas came in, with those leg kicks was the Muay Thai kicks was a beast, man. So I would put him. I would give an honorary mention to him for what he did for mixed martial arts at the time. You can even mention Rampage and Chuck Liddell, honorary mentions.
Yeah.
But even Wanderlei Silva, you got to put him in there.
Vanderlei.
Yeah, Wanderlei was a beast, man. He's still fighting to this day, man. Beating Kung Lee was impressive to me.
Yeah, it was.
I thought that Kung Lee, that's one of my favorite fighters today. I thought that he would beat Wanderlei, but so you gotta give Wanderlei credit for that. But
yeah, oh yeah, definitely. I mean, because Vanderlei Silva, I mean, people were having doubts of that dude's continuing to fight, but Kung Lee, really good opponent. He came out there and he, it really good scrap, and ended up knocking him out. So, and Kung Lee got a good chin too. So you got to be a hard puncher, to knock that dude out.
yeah, Kung Lee's a beast of a striker, man. And also, we talked about this yesterday. You want to give an honorary mention to Bruce Lee?
Yes, because Bruce Lee, like just in the fight game alone, martial arts, every aspect of martial arts and fighting, in terms of like competition and just every form of martial arts. I think with his philosophy, he was the guy that really made mixed martial arts, or at least had that idea of mixed martial arts in his day. Because he trained in so many different disciplines, grappling and striking. He was the guy that said that the best fighters ain't a boxer, judo wrestler, kickboxer. It's the guy that is able to adapt to all fighting styles, not just somebody with one discipline in there. And I'm paraphrasing. I don't know what his exact words, but I remember him making mention of this. I mean, and it's so true. I mean, if you're like, let's say you get in a fight with another, someone training one discipline on the street. Let's say if you was just a boxer, but you fight somebody that has judo, they have wrestling, they have Muay Thai in their background. Who do you think has more tools to work with? Who do you think has more techniques to use?
Absolutely.
The boxer or the guy, the guy that has
the more well-rounded fighter. The more well-rounded fighter will win, because most fights has been proven will at some point come to a clinch or end up on the ground.
Yep.
So
end up on the ground.
The person who has the ability to grapple and handle himself in clinches and on the ground will be the victor in most cases.
Yep.
So yeah, I remember Bruce Lee. He came in with the discipline of Wing Chun, and then he saw flaws in the tradition, and he started to look and study different martial arts to combine techniques and throwing out the stuff that didn't work, keeping the stuff that did work, to develop a style that was more practical. And I think that's the beginning of mixed martial arts.
Yes, I mean, especially in the modern day, people. Cause that's the idea, is to be the most well-rounded fighter. In the gym, they talk about being the most well-rounded fighter. And I know you've been in the gym. I've been in the gym. They say that a lot of the traditional stuff that people thought could work don't really work against a well-trained fighter. You know what I mean? Someone that can use multiple disciplines and then use the actual tools that actually work. having, throwing a punch, and having the other, like throwing a punch with one arm, and the opposite arm is on your waist. That's
Right.
that's one of the most, to me, that's one of the most flawed techniques you could ever use. You know what I mean?
Right.
And obviously there's certain, kicks in traditional martial arts that are very useful, and some techniques, even on the streets and everything, but some things just won't work, like, there's a lot of things that probably won't work. I don't know, I've never used chain punching at all, but I don't know if that works, but,
Well, a lot of that
believe,
stuff doesn't work, man. A lot of traditional. It's good. I believe it's good to know the traditional forms. I got a lot of respect for traditional forms in martial arts, but in real combat, a lot of that stuff doesn't work. Nobody gives you time to set up in your your stance, and these a lot of times like Taekwondo and stuff like that, they teach you to kick from the knee. They teach you to kick from the knee, rather in Muay Thai you kick from your waist. You follow through with your kick, and it's not like more Taekwondo is more of a pity pat point scoring martial arts. It was turned into a sport, turned into a sport for the Olympics, but so it's a lot of, and I'm not picking on Taekwondo, I'm just saying, like, it could be any form, but a lot of stuff is outdated. So I think that I think you had a good list, man. I don't know exactly how I would put the guys in order. It's hard to do it. Once you get past like 5, the top 5, it's hard to place guys. But definitely, I would put Royce Gracie in there for what he meant for mixed martial arts, because he came in with his family name on his back, and he challenged every discipline, and jiu-jitsu reigned supreme at that time. And now even jiu-jitsu is not good enough. Now you have to be well-rounded. You have to know a little something to everything.
Pretty much. Because back then, this dude was taking down guys that were, much bigger than him. But when you have the skills of him, it's not that big of a surprise. But when you start, getting like, maybe not just real athletes, but like, not so much just real athletes, because athletes will always be athletes. That's one thing I remember hearing Bernard Hopkins say. Who has the best fighters at who has the best athletes at mixed martial arts boxers? Athletes will be athletes, man. If you have the well-trained fighters that are trained in every aspect and every discipline, those guys are the ones that will change the game, and you have to end up changing your game at some point. That's just the whole point of life. Things fluctuate and things advance over time.
Evolution.